Hey everybody, welcome back to Self Transformation Radio. Doing a really cool interview today with a woman named Kathleen Donnelly Israel. She took a spiritual journey at the age of 72 years old to northern Spain on the Camino Santiago. She did this at 72 years old. She walked 500 miles. So we're going to talk to her today. She learned so much and has a lot of wisdom to share. She's written a book. She's now 74, if I'm doing the math correctly, but I will confirm. Regardless, she's in her 70s and doing stuff that people my age are not doing or are too afraid to do. I'm really excited to get into this story with her. I think we are going to get a lot out of it. So without further ado, here's my interview with Kathleen Donnelly Israel. Enjoy. Kathleen, thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank
I've
you.
already, you're very welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've already prepped our audience for kind of what to expect based on what information I know, but I know that I did not do it justice. So I want to hear it in your own words, kind of maybe who you were. I don't know where you want to start. So I'm just going to let you take the floor and tell us what comes to mind as like where you started in your transformational journey.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had a troubled childhood. My parents, yeah. Anyway, I spent quite a few years. My husband got Parkinson's disease, and for the last 10 years of his disease, I had to be home taking care of him. So I spent that time online studying with enlightened thought leaders about how to heal. And I would listen to Darius Barazunda, and he would have healers on. And if it struck me as important, I would buy their program, or sometimes they would just give you their healing. And so I was a really good student for many years. And I felt like I knew some stuff. And after all those years, and I had done quite a bit of healing myself. And so I wanted to write a book about the healing, and I thought it would be a gift. And then anyway, while Ron was ill, I spent a lot of time on the internet, and my girlfriend Judy went on the Camino Santiago, and I was like, in the throes of I got to be here. And so I just thought, I had given up all the dreams I thought Ron and I would be doing in our old age. I thought we would be riding our bicycles across France or something. My husband was an athlete. And when he got Parkinson's disease, I was just like, oh man, I guess we're not doing that. And then, so when Judy went on the Camino, I thought to myself, you know what? When Ron's done with his disease, I'm going to do that. And you can't tell how long it's going to take, right? So that was 2013, and Ron died in 18. And so in 19, after I was done with all the paperwork for people die, you have to do paperwork. And I was all done in January. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to figure it out. So I read books and I watched YouTubes about how to pack light. I went to at the library, they had a seminar about how to pack light for the Camino. And so I went to that, and the room was full of people. And the lady who was giving the talk asked the room, who are you of you are going on the Camino? And I was the only one that raised my hand. So I guess all those other people just wanted to know how to pack light. And so anyway, after the seminar, she took me aside and told me a lot of things that were so valuable for me to know, like you need to make a reservation for your first 3 nights. And she told me the place she stayed in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And so I made sure I stayed there, and she just gave me a lot of pointers, and it was like so great. And I was just, when you read about it, the best times to go are in spring and in fall, because the summer is really hot and there's so many people there. And then the winter is so cold, it's really dangerous. So I went in April, got my airfare. When you get your airfare, you're going, right? And I went to Paris. I flew to Paris and I spent a week there. at an Airbnb just to make sure I didn't have jet lag when I started walking.
Super
And
smart.
then,
That was really smart. And yeah, you're
yeah,
really committed when you buy that plane ticket. It's like, whoa, once you buy it, you're going.
yes, right. And I asked people to go with me. And actually, I thought this one lady was going to go with me, but she never bought her plane ticket. There you go. But I have four guardian angels that I know personally, and I took them with me. And so I wasn't really alone. But the thing about walking the Camino is you can walk as fast as you can walk. And if I got somebody else to go with me, either I would have to walk slow for them or they'd have to walk slow for me, or else we wouldn't walk together. And so it would be a drag, I think. So I went alone. And like I say, I read books and I had a book that mapped the whole thing out. It had every city and what the albergues were. An albergue is like a hostel for the pilgrims. And so I'm Catholic, so it was a holy pilgrimage for me. And I loved the art. And anyway, I just did it. I think my mother was a person who does things. I mean, she was a Girl Scout leader till she was 85 years old. And she was like, when she was 85, she was still taking the girls down to the river and going canoeing, you know. So I think I just always was self-reliant on the travel business. So,
That's
and
amazing. So, how many miles did you walk every single day?
So my original idea was to walk 10 miles a day. So you figure 500 miles, 10 miles a day, 50 days, right? But once I got there, I realized that you just get buff while you're walking, right? So you can walk more miles later on. And the reason why I knew I could walk 10 miles a day is because I used to walk with my friend Severa. I used to walk down by the bay. I'm in San Diego. We walked 5 miles and it didn't even make me sweat. I was just walking 5 miles, walked 2.5 miles out, 2.5 miles back. And I thought, well, I can just walk 5 miles in the morning and 5 miles after lunch, and I can do this. So I like to walk, and it's a low tech skill. You just one foot in front of the other, right? And I mean, if
Yeah.
there's a if there's a hill, maybe you just take more breaths or something. I teach breathing. I teach transformational breathing, and so I could play with the breathing and know what I was doing. And I one thing I noticed is I walk a 6 beat breath, breathe in 6 steps, breathe out 6 steps, breathe in 6 steps, breathe out 6 steps. And many years ago, when I was in my 40s, I ran a marathon, and that's what I did with the running. I breathed in 6 and breathed out 6. But yeah, when I ran that marathon, I wasn't a runner at all. My husband's a runner, he's a triathlete, but I just started out walking for a minute and running for 15 seconds and walking a minute and running. I started out like that, and then I went to 30 seconds running, and I just improved my stamina in that way. And before I went on the Camino, I was volunteering at a horse ranch. Actually, I'm afraid of horses. And I thought, well, if I volunteer at this horse ranch, that I would maybe not be afraid of horses, because I just felt like I wanted to have a relationship with a horse, but I was afraid. And so I worked at that ranch, and I was like toting around wheelbarrows full of horse pucky. And I'd go scrape them up in the stalls, and then I'd put them in the wheelbarrow. And so I got a really strong core from doing that. I didn't realize it, but I got really strong from doing that. So that was a good thing to have too. It was a strong core. And then before I left on the Camino, my sister-in-law Bernadette told me, well, Kathleen, you're going to have to walk up mountains. So she went and found all the mountains in San Diego, and we hiked up them together. And so she got me ready in that way. So
You were ready. You were ready. And I love what you said about going alone too, that you knew if someone came with you that you'd either have to slow down for them or speed up. And it was just ended up being better to go alone. I can relate to that so much that I think a lot of times we're afraid to do it on our own. And then we realize that doing it on our own is the best thing. And we end up enjoying it even more. I think as someone who's been divorced, I was so afraid when I got divorced back in 2019 to be alone because I got married so young, barely 24 years old before my brain started or stopped developing.
mhm.
And I didn't know really what it was like to be alone because I was kind of conditioned by, I guess, Disney movies and romance books and whatever to like always be with a person, or I wasn't complete unless I was in some kind of relationship. That when I was by myself, I didn't know who I was because I'd given away so much power to that relationship and so much of my identity was wrapped up into it that it was just terrifying to be by myself. And then I was like meeting myself. And now I'm living in a van, traveling around, and I spend a lot of time alone and I find that I really like myself. And I think it's really an amazing skill to be able to go and do things by yourself, like walk miles and miles and miles a day on the Camino, right?
Yeah, it's a total spiritual journey. So, yeah, as a widow, I'm alone now. When I had 5 kids and a husband, and I every once in a while I thought, gee, I wonder what it's like to be lonely. I think I would like that. And and so now I am alone and I can do whatever I want. And
There's a lot of
yeah,
freedom. You have a lot of freedom.
yes. Yes, that's right. And I am going to do the Camino again. I'm going to have my 75th birthday on the Camino. I'm going to be 75 this year, and I'm going to do the Camino del Norte in April, and my birthday's in May, so I'll still be there on my birthday.
Is that a different part of the Camino than you did before, or?
Yeah, like the first time I went, I was 69 years old, and I walked from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France to to Santiago, and that was basically 500 miles. It's like I think it's 489 miles, something like that. But anyway, they say it's 500. And then I walked from the next in 21, I walked from up to Santiago. So I walked up through Portugal to Santiago. And then the third one is that I want to do is the Camino del Norte, which is along the northern coast of Spain. So, it's the Atlantic Ocean and the Bay of Biscayne, I guess, or something like that. Anyway, and I love the ocean, so I'm thinking I'm going to love that. But it is more mountainous. I'm thinking I should have done that sooner instead of now that I'm going to be 75. But anyway, I'm not going to be concerned about it. I'm just going to do one foot in front of the other. And
Yeah, yeah, you're just gonna do it. It doesn't matter how long it takes, right? It's gonna happen.
that's exactly right. I gave myself, the first time I went, I gave myself 3 months. I thought, I'm not coming home till I do it.
Oh, I
And
love that. And you did it a lot faster than you thought. You said it was only going to be 10 miles a day, and you ended up realizing how much fitter you actually were, and
I
you
got
were
I got fit
noticing.
along the way, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah,
Because walking, if you can't just walk 10 miles a day and not get better at it or stronger, or just like your body gets used to it. And so you can go further. I remember the first time I got to the place where I was going to spend the night. I got there before lunch and I was like,
wow.
oh, I think I need to keep walking. And I kind of had a reservation at that place, but I was just like, and I tried to call them and they weren't answering the phone. So I thought, well, I guess so I just called another place, another 5K down the road, and they said they had room for me. So I just walked to there instead that day. So, and then that's when I knew I can walk 15K, or maybe it was 15 miles. I can't remember. We're on miles and they're on kilometers. But I
Right,
think
right.
anyway, I walked until 2 o'clock in the afternoon instead of noon. And
Yeah. I think walking is so underrated, especially in a world like the hustle culture where it's like go hard or go home. And that can actually be really damaging to the body, especially for women's bodies. I know one of my favorite ways to move besides walking is, and I even have one in my van, is the rebounder, a trampoline that is just a little mini trampoline. It's made for, athletic use. It's not like one of the little kid ones, but I just jog on it. It's so good to move in a gentle way that strengthens those core muscles and the supporting muscles around all the joints, and instead of just pounding, like running on the pavement, especially if we're like not doing, like I was not necessarily always good at staying in alignment, stretching, doing massage therapy, using the different like physical therapy tools that I didn't know about then to make sure that my muscles were not pulling my spine out of alignment, which can cause a lot of pain, especially if you're out there pounding the pavement. So there's a lot to be said about that. And walking really is underrated. They're so peaceful. It doesn't put a lot of stress on the body. And like what you were saying with the breathing exercises, it can be really meditative as well.
Yes, yes, that's right. And then when you're walking through such beauty, parts of the Camino are just so beautiful. It's just like, oh my gosh, you're walking over a river on rocks. You're stepping from rock to rock, and the trees are just coming up over you, and the foliage down by the river is like lace, and the river's pulling it along, and it's just tumbling and beautiful.
That sounds amazing. I have this picture in my head now, thanks to thanks to you. I'm so inspired by this. And what was it like? Like, were there always food stops along the way? Was it like really desolate? I'm kind of thinking like Appalachian Trail. Is it like that at all, or no?
Well, I don't know. I haven't done the Appalachian Trail, but the Camino it's not a third world country, number one. You walk through towns, and the book that I had told me where the stores were. It had like a list of the towns, and then on each town it told, okay, so this town has a pharmacy, this town has a restaurant, this town has a bar, this town has a grocery store and stuff. I don't, regular food is bad for me, so I kind of cooked a lot for myself, but there are restaurants all along the way. But I would, some of the foods that I would eat are like, I would get a zucchini and a red pepper. They have these giant red peppers, and an onion and some butter and some eggs, and I would cut up the vegetables and fry them in the butter and throw a couple eggs in there. And like, you can buy a half a dozen of eggs, and so what you do is you have two for dinner, two for breakfast, and then cook two and take it with you for lunch. And sometimes I would get, like, every day I tried to have a cucumber and a tomato, and I would just eat that cucumber like an apple. I washed it and made sure, and also I would buy a sausage, and I would keep a sausage in my pack, and so I would just eat on that until I needed another one, and then I'd go buy another one. You don't want to carry a lot of stuff with you, but you got to have something to eat. And so, yeah, I was, every once in a while, like, I would buy some chicken and cook it while you're when you like, the albergues are all along the way, and they're like a giant, like, sometimes they're a house or sometimes some big facility, and it's just full of bunk beds, and then they have a kitchen, and then they have bathrooms for you, and maybe laundry facilities. And so that book told me where all these things were, and I would go and make sure I got an albergue that had a kitchen. And they have pots and pans there. You don't have to bring anything like that, and silverware and plates and stuff. And yeah, I would just go in and make my food, and everybody else was making their food too. And so I would sit down and just meet with people, and like, somebody would bring some wine. And if you had a knife with a corkscrew on it, you were everybody's friend, because they could open their wine bottle with your corkscrew. And yeah, you meet people along the way. And one of the things that people, the way you get to know people is you say, why did you come? And they would tell you what circumstances in their life caused them to want to walk the Camino. Like, some people, like, they have some kind of hardship. Some people died in their life or like a divorce or something, and they just need to get away and figure things out. And so they go on the Camino. And I met a man, he's from Los Angeles, I mean, just like 100 miles away. And he's told me that 3 of his friends died in rapid succession, and he was so sad he couldn't do his life. And somebody suggested he go do the Camino. And so that's why he was there. Another guy divorced his wife, and he was on the Camino to decide what he should be doing now. And so there's so many stories in my book that I just, it was such a delight to write the book because I could remember all the things that happened. And really, the reason why I wrote the book was to tell my healing stories. But when I got home from the Camino, I was like, oh man, I'm reluctant to be teachy, and I didn't know how to write the book. And so I decided, oh, yeah, I told all those things to people on the Camino when I met people. And so what I did was I wrote my book about walking the Camino and telling people the healing things. So that's basically what the book is.
Well, tell us some of the healing things. What were some of the things that you were teaching people along the way?
Possibility thinking is one of them. There's endless possibilities. Whatever it is, whatever happens, we might think, oh, I did this, so this is going to happen. But really, there's endless possibilities. You can't even imagine what could happen. Like this one guy, his mother and father raised them in this little town in Ireland, and him and his 2 brothers. And then his father got a job in Dublin, so they moved to Dublin and left the boys home to finish raising themselves. And so his older brother wanted to go into the service, and so he left, and so it was him and his younger brother, and he needed to leave too, but he stayed there until his brother finished high school, and then he wanted to leave, and his brother was really angry with him for leaving him. And so I said to him, well, think of the happiest times that you've had. And he said, yeah, that was my parents living with us in that little town. And I said, okay, take your parents away. What's the next happiest thing? And he said, well, me being with my 2 brothers, that was pretty cool. Us living, in the house together. And then I said, well, take your older brother away. Then what do you see? And he said, there's me and my brother, and we're pretty happy. And then I said, how could you make it happy with you gone? And he said, well, I could take my brother to Dublin and have him live with my parents. He's their responsibility, not mine. And I said, yeah, that sounds really good. And you got to think of things. You got to throw it out there. The other thing is worrying is what worrying is? It's
Worshiping Satan, that's what I call it.
worrying is making up a sad story and believing in it. And it's not even true.
Mm,
You just made it up. You don't know what's going to happen. And people who worry about other people, they're like cursing them, sending bad vibes to them when they're trying to do something. So I don't recommend worrying at all. You need to just stop that and make up a good story, and then send the good wishes to them along with your good story that you made up about them, because it's not even true, and anything could happen. I mean, it doesn't have to be that the sad thing happened. And really, sometimes the sad thing happens because people just, they're just thinking sad things and sending bad vibes to us.
right.
So,
We perceive it, and our reaction is what's creating our reality. Like there's no such thing as an external reality. It's only an internal reality that we're projecting outside of us. That was like a mind-blowing thing when I finally got that. I used to be one of those people where people, enlightened thought leaders or healers, would say things like, oh, we create our own reality, and I'd be like, that's BS. Reality is just reality, and that's just the way it is. And I was just not awake yet. But in the last 5 years, things have changed drastically from that person, and now I understand what that means. It's like, oh, oh, how I'm choosing to see and interpret events around me and the assumptions that I make and the programming that I've had from my childhood and beyond. I have created my life from that, and I get to choose to make it different at any time. I can make different choices, and meeting one person could just change everything.
Yeah, and you can even make up a really good story. I mean, I used to tell my sad story because I had really trauma from my childhood.
Yeah.
And I used to tell my story, and one lady in a prayer group I was in, she said, "Well, why don't you just make up a better story?" And I'm like, "Well, that wouldn't be true." But I didn't realize what I was doing. I was bringing in more sadness with my sad story. This one lady told me that I was just looking back and living from my past. And what I needed to do was turn the corner. If you turn the corner, when you look back, you're not looking at your old story. You're looking at a clean past. So turning the corner it just really spoke to me. And so that's what I did. I just turned the corner. The other thing is, we do have, even though if we have a sad life, we do have some wonderful experiences. They told me to think of something good that happened in the past. And so my go-to for thinking of something good was my little Cecilia uh she didn't want to take swimming lessons, and my philosophy is you got to learn to swim before you're 10 years old because you're going to feel goofy in a swimming class when you're bigger than that. She didn't want to go to swimming, and I said, "Look, Cecilia, all you have to do is do what the teacher tells you to. It's their problem to tell you. They're the one with the problem, not you. You just need to do what they tell you to." And so I remember sitting there with the parents watching the kids, and all of a sudden, there went my Cecilia. She just laid down in the water, and she was kicking and doing a front float with her kicking, and she just went right across the top of the water. And that's like the best memory I think I have, and so that's my go-to. If I need to think of something good, I think about that.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kathleen, this has been a most invigorating conversation, and I want to go walk the Camino. I don't know when I'm going to do it. I just know I want to do it. Does anybody do it because they want to get in better shape?
And you know what? Only like 1/3 of the people do it for a spiritual journey. Like 2/3 of the people there are like, yeah, I just want to do something amazing, or maybe they just need to get away, or yeah, sure, you can if you want to get in better shape, you can walk the Camino. You need to walk up some mountains and stuff because you need to, if you go and your muscles are just really tight, you could get a Charlie horse or shin splints and stuff like that. So you need to help yourself out beforehand in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I exercise regularly, but I think, I mean, even if people do go in order to get in shape, I feel like in the back of at least my experience anyway would be partially spiritual regardless, because we are spiritual beings, and I want to
Mm,
quiet that voice in the back of my head that's saying, "Oh, that's too hard," right? And that is a spiritual thing when you overcome that voice in the back of your head that tells you that you can't do it, or that it's too hard, or it's not possible, or you'd hate it, or whatever, that like your ego will
right.
tend to try to tell you not to do it just to keep you safe. And I mean, that's how I ended up in the van, was knowing that it was kind of scary, but there was no way I could do it and then not become a better person in the process. And that's kind of how I'm viewing the potential of doing the Camino one of these days.
Yeah, yeah. I was lucky because, my husband died and I didn't have anything else to do. It's sad that my boyfriend, my date, was
Yeah,
gone
of
now.
course.
But yeah, I really didn't have anything else to do. And so I was able to walk the whole thing. But you see people like they'll start in San Juan and walk to Pamplona, and then the next year they'll come back and walk from Pamplona to, whatever. And my friend who did the Camino, she started in Leon, and walked the Camino because she had a job and she couldn't be gone for months on end. So, but I was really fortunate. I have renters in my house. When my husband got sick, I was like, okay, we're gonna get renters in the house or we're gonna lose the house. So I still have renters and they basically took care of the house for me while I was gone. So that was nice.
Yeah, yeah, everything totally worked out. It's amazing. I mean, that's just part of the faith journey too, is knowing that no matter what, you're going to benefit from anything and everything that happens. And as long as you know that, then what could go wrong, right?
You know what I'm doing right now, which is kind of amazing? I'm stepping out in faith. I have a really nice home and I rent my rooms to students, so I have an income from that. But I want to be able to see the ocean. So I want to move like about 10 miles from here where I can see the ocean. And I don't have a down payment for a house, so I have to sell my house. And then hopefully I can just buy the next house with cash so I wouldn't have a house payment. But it's just like, here I am all by myself. I had to go get somebody to help me pack up my stuff. And you just have to, if you have a dream and you find a way to do it, then you need to just do it.
And the way appears, the people that you need and the resources are just somehow there. And I think if we're in that stressful zone or we're worrying, then we're not going to be able to see what is available to us. It's like a totally different zone of energy where you're just like clouded. All of your energy is being wasted and drained by the worrying, by the fear. But when we just relax and take a deep breath and understand that everything is okay right now and the way it's supposed to be, then it's like the way appears. It's like that scene in Indiana Jones that is so famous where you just have to take the first step and then the next one appears.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm stepping out on the step that's not there.
And I can't wait to hear how it goes. Kathleen, I am just so honored to have met you and have had this conversation with you. What I'm going to put your link to the book in the show notes. What words of wisdom would you like to leave the audience with today?
Okay, I want to say something about the book too, but my
Yeah.
words of wisdom are I have a prayer that I say when I don't know what to do. Seems like there's no possibility of anything good happening, and I don't know what to do. And the prayer is, Dear God, please make everything turn out okay. And then I let God make everything turn out okay. And so that's what I do. But I want to tell you about my book. In the book, you get it on Amazon. And if you get it on Kindle, please read it because I get paid per page. They like know when you turn the page. And
Oh,
then I
wow.
get
That's
like three
cool.
more cents when you turn the page. So you have to read the book. And across, but I mean, the cover is really killer. I really love my cover. My cover designer was amazing. But the across from the table of contents is an invitation. You have to double opt in and you can see the pictures. So when you're reading chapter 1, you can see the pictures from chapter 1, and reading 2, you can, because my friends told me you should put your pictures in the book. They're great. And I thought, well, gee, then the book's going to be $50, and so I made a website with portfolios and galleries and stuff like that. So you can see the pictures while you read the book. That's my gift with
I
this.
have to agree with you that your cover is awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kathleen. I'm going to email you when this is ready to go. And I just really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you, dear. Thanks for this opportunity.